Well, welcome everyone. This is the Edmund Road air monitoring station. We've got 3 sites like this scattered around Rotorua monitoring air quality, and in particular at these sites we're interested in a contaminant called PM10, or particulate matter less than 10 microns. So this is the really fine material that primarily comes from combustion sources, people burning stuff, whether it be a domestic heating appliance, or another example is some of the material that comes out of the tailpipe of your car. That also contains a certain amount of PM10, and obviously there's a number of natural sources as well. Just windblown dust also has a certain amount of PM10 in it as well. So I've got a number of these sites scattered around the town or city, and what we're measuring is this contaminant, and we measure it in relation to a national environmental standard. So just about 10 years ago now, 2004, the central government issued this environmental standard, and as I'm aware it's the only environmental standard out there at the moment. They're looking at doing one for water quality, or fresh water, but at the moment air quality is the only one. So within that standard there are a number of contaminants that the regional council's interested in. These include carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, oxides of nitrogen and ozone. But the 5th one is particulate matter, and that's what we're monitoring here in Rotorua, because some of our early monitoring showed that our levels here can get quite high, and in fact on certain times of the year the levels can get in excess of the standard. Like the standard value is set at 50, and quite often it's common for us to be recording values in excess of 100, so that's obviously of a concern to council. And as part of the standard, there's a responsibility of council to, over a period of time, and the deadline is 2020, basically get the number of exceedances of that standard down to only 1 a year. At the moment in Rotorua we're trucking along at about 20. On a bad year we might have anywhere up to about 40 exceedances of the standard. So that's 40 days of the year where the air quality is above the standard level. And the standard level is basically set, it's a health-based standard, so a lot of work's gone in primarily internationally on setting the standard, looking at long-term health studies. So the idea is basically to try and get air quality within the area well below that standard. Don't use it as a target, but the lower the better. So what we've found is the monitoring that we've done at this site, which is basically our worst case location in Rotorua, we can get up to 40 odd exceedances a year, and that's primarily in the winter months. So I've got a few plots here of what the data looks like. So as you can see, it's time of the year, the period of the year, January through to December, and this is basically a summary of the 6 years of records. So on the same day every year you've got a minimum, maximum and an average value, so that's what I've plotted. And as you can see, there's a strong wintertime influence in the data set. Here's our standard, so we don't want to be above that, but as you can see, most of the time, or for long periods of time in the winter months, we're well above that. So the main source that we're dealing with at that time of the year is obviously emissions from domestic heating, people burning stuff, obviously to stay warm. So council's got quite an extensive program in place now, looking at trying to change this profile so that we only have 1 exceedance. Well, the best thing would be no exceedances, but we're allowed 1, only 1 a year. So council spent quite a bit of money to date looking at putting an action plan in place with a number of incentives and initiatives around trying to get people to change the way in which they heat their dwellings. But if they're pretty much stuck on using a wood burner, what we're requiring them to do, or encouraging them to do, is move to a cleaner burning wood burner. So basically people who sell wood burners now can't sell them unless they meet a standard, and that standard requires the wood burner to only emit a very low amount of particulate matter. What we have found though, that it does come down to how people run these appliances. You can get some people that run them very poorly and you get a lot of emissions coming out. So there's a lot of work going into trying to educate people on how to use these appliances efficiently, and looking at things like ensuring that they've got nice dry fuel to burn. So it means being a little bit proactive, getting out there early, collecting firewood early, letting it dry so it's well seasoned, and also the way in which they just use the appliance as well, trying not to let things smoulder and dampen things down, which obviously causes a significant amount of emission. The way in which the instrument works, if people are interested in that, is basically during these events there's obviously a lot of fine particulate matter floating around in the air, too small for you to see individual particles. But what this instrument does is it's got a pump on the back end of it, so it sucks air in from outside through this special inlet at the top, same as what you see up there. So it's pretty fancy. At the top it's designed to keep the rain out, because obviously we don't want water going inside the instrument, and there's a gauze mesh in there to keep the bugs and that out. And then it sucks the air in, and the smaller particles actually make their way through this little labyrinth here, where they come in, out through this little hole here, and they've got to go around a couple of 180-degree bends in order to get down through these three little holes and into the instrument. So this part of the instrument is actually quite important. This is where it cuts out the larger particles and only collects the finer ones. So yeah, it comes in through there. Inside the instrument itself is a little glass pendulum that oscillates. So as the material falls on top of the pendulum, it changes the mass of the pendulum and the frequency of the pendulum, and the instrument picks that up and determines that material's being deposited on the top. On top of that pendulum is a little filter that collects that material. So that's probably been exposed for a couple of weeks in the middle of winter, so it's that sort of material.